These days, we hear the words cloud computing more often than not. It is thrown around as jargon, and surprisingly, many people are really not clear as to how it fits into their application pipelines and what exactly is the hoopla all about. Cloud computing simply involves one or more computing units or servers located on the internet for the purposes of hosting your app, storing your files, or just processing data. It is not some mythical place up in the air, and it is really quite easy to understand. What makes cloud computing an interesting proposition is that these computing units or servers can be dynamically increased in number when needed and removed when not needed. This helps online businesses to handle peak loads during various times of the year, such as during the Black Friday period in the US. And it also keeps a check on the investment, since permanently allocated resources are not needed and everything exists in a virtual space atop infrastructure provided by big players like Amazon. You simply pay for what you use. Typically, cloud service providers fall in one of three categories. You've got software as a service providers who offer complete end-to-end applications that are accessible using a web browser. So, Google Apps and Salesforce are two of your biggest software as a service providers because they offer complete products that do not require local machine level installation and can be used from anywhere in the world. All you need is an internet connection and a web browser. Next, we've got platform as a service providers like Heroku and the Google Cloud. These offer ready to move in infrastructure for developers. Once you've written your app, you simply upload the app to one of these providers and they'll take care of its runtime technology stack and the deployment environment. This essentially means that as a developer or a startup who has no experience in deploying and managing servers, I can focus my attention on my app and do not have to worry about servers, scalability, and all the intricacies that come with it. I get to package and deploy my app, and the platform provider manages everything else. This is an excellent proposition because it takes your mind away from server management blues. You can focus on your product instead. Last of all, we've got infrastructure as a service providers. These are raw computing power enablers where you can provision a cloud server instance of your own. But beyond that, you have to dive in and set up the server from the Linux prompt up. Everything that your app needs, your whole technology stack, has to be manually set up and wired to work. This sounds difficult, but this is where you get 100% access to your own environment, something that is most suitable for large organizations because this way they can mold the entire ecosystem as per their application platform and design. In fact, both software as a service and platform as a service providers are actually built on top of these raw infrastructure enablers. Heroku, for instance, internally hosts your app on Amazon Web Services with options to host on other enablers like Google as well. In this section, we will use the services of Heroku, a platform as a service provider that is super simple to use and is extremely powerful and dynamic for most apps. In 2010, Heroku was acquired by Salesforce and is a leading cloud platform provider, powering some of the biggest apps on the web today. As mentioned earlier, being a platform provider, Heroku lets you focus on your app rather than on setting up servers at scale. At the heart of everything is a dyno, a container within which your app sits. When you want to scale, you simply add more dynos. And you can write your apps using Node.js, Python, Ruby, Java, Go, and several other languages and platforms. Heroku is really very versatile. Heroku's dynos are essentially server representations as a container. At their core, they contain memory and you can get dynos that provide up to 14 gigs of RAM, which is really awesome. The OS is typically Ubuntu and you've got language runtimes and libraries for a host of platforms like Node.js, Ruby, Python, etc. Once you create a dyno, it is pre-configured and built up to receive your app. And your app can be easily pushed using Git, the version control system of choice. If you're not familiar with Git, then I would suggest you look it up on Git's website, www.git-scm.com. Once you push your app, it is executed by default and you can directly go on to the provided or your configured URL to access the app. It's that simple. Dynos come in multiple flavors. You've got web dynos which handle the HTTP traffic. You've also got worker dynos which can be used to do the processing internally in an app. So essentially, if you want to vertically scale, that is, if you need more powerful dynos, you can get those on Heroku as well. And if you need to horizontally scale, that is, if you need to handle more visitors and traffic to your app, you can simply add more dynos and they all seamlessly work together. Adding more dynos, both web and worker ones, is relatively simple and can be done using the Heroku tool belt. And if that's not all, your app has access to hundreds of hosted apps, database servers, utilities, services, and so much more, like SendGrid for provisioning an SMTP server, and Redis, MongoDB, and even MySQL. All these services are offered as integrated add-ons that can be added with a single click and configured with ease to work with your app. Heroku really takes the pain away as far as deployment goes. To summarize the pipeline once again, you write your app first, then you download and install Heroku's command line interface called Toolbelt, and this is something we'll do in the next screencast. Then you log in using Toolbelt, you create a dyno, configure environment variables for your app, provision or add any resources such as Redis to your account, and finally you push your code to the dyno using Git. And that's all you need to do. Excited? Let's begin. But before you move on to the next screencast, go on Heroku.com and sign up for a free account.